want to transition to the NFL for a moment. A lot of great games, no question about it. But there's one game in particular that I wanted to touch on, and that's the Indianapolis Colts and the New England Patriots. So this was essentially, because if they lost to the Pats and they were 7-7 in the highly contested AFC, it almost seems like it would be too insurmountable of a comeback to make the postseason because of just how narrow the margins are in the AFC. If you lose to another AFC foe, the odds of you getting that, they would have been in the 11th seed as opposed to the 5th seed, which is where they're at right now. The path forward just seemed very bleak in my opinion and a bit grim. And so they really needed this win yesterday, and they played like it with their season on the line. And so from that perspective, I wasn't completely surprised by the outcome because they're taking on a New England Patriots team viewed as the best team in the conference. They were the hottest team in the NFL, riding a 7-game win streak. And they just seemed like they kind of had this perfect sheen to their exterior for the last 2 months. No one could puncture any holes. The Bills got close with some help from the weather, but Pats got the job done last week, and they looked like they were probably going to compete really well this week. And to the credit of the Indianapolis Colts, they ran all over them. And that's the one thing when you watch the New England Patriots is they can be had against teams who can run the football. There are two bad matchups for them. There are two. And this one was one of them. The Indianapolis Colts and the Tennessee Titans are the two worst matchups for the New England Patriots. Two teams that feature dominant and established running backs in the NFL. Because the New England Patriots are bottom 10 in their defense against the run. They can be had against teams who can run the football. Jonathan Taylor, who continues to make his MVP case, and by the way, I would just like to say as an aside, given how much Tom Brady struggled last night, I think that Aaron Rodgers is obviously the front runner for MVP, but I think Jonathan Taylor, there's a good argument to be made that he should be second in the MVP race right now, especially after 29 carries, 170 yards, a touchdown on Saturday. He was running all over, running roughshod over the New England Patriots. And we even saw against the Tennessee Titans, a game that the Pats dominated like 36-13. The Titans still ran for 270 yards. Hilliard had like 150 yards that game. So they can be had against teams who can run the football. And that's the biggest issue with them. No team is perfect. That's their biggest flaw right now. And so the question that we always had about the Patriots that we still, quite frankly, don't have the answer to is how can this team function and operate when they're trailing big? Because the Colts led 20-0 after 3 quarters. And we've pegged the Patriots as a team that is not a come-from-behind team. And there was nothing from their performance on Saturday that would indicate anything differently, that would cause us to change that narrative. There isn't. They really struggled, and it's not a surprise. They go from, you have 1 week where Mac Jones throws 3 passes in inclement weather in Buffalo against the Bills last week. He goes from a 3-pass performance to throwing it 45 times on the road at Indianapolis. And to be honest, even though, he threw for 299 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he threw 2 picks, and most of those passing yards came in the fourth quarter when the game was pretty much out of hand. So how do I interpret that? I interpret it one simple way. The team simply functions a lot better when they're able to establish the run and when they're not trailing big. Which, sure, you could say, well, Jonah, come on. That's the recipe for a lot of teams. Sure. But when you watch a team like the Buccaneers or the Packers or the Chiefs with firepower, even if they're trailing big, sure, the outcome may look bleak, but you're saying to yourself, well, who do they have on the other side? Oh, they have Aaron Rodgers. Oh, they have Tom Brady. Oh, they got Patrick Mahomes. So they can probably eat up big chunks and get back into the game. You don't have that same feeling with Mac Jones at this point in his career. So that's going to be a formula come postseason if you're playing against the Patriots, is if you can jump on them early, then you have a better chance to win. And the other thing is the Colts defense did a great job neutralizing the Patriots run game, which is something that we've seen over the course of the season is their main recipe for success. They only had 81 rushing yards on Saturday night. And this is a team that wants to run the clock down. They want to eat up time of possession and rely on their defense and a couple key throws from Mac Jones to win them games. But it's the backs that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And they didn't get that on Saturday night. And that's why you have to credit the Indianapolis Colts. Darius Leonard, 10 total tackles, 8 solo tackles. DeForest Buckner had a sack. And the Indianapolis Colts have been one of the hottest teams in football. I'd say along with the 49ers and the New England Patriots entering this week, the Colts are one of the hottest teams. They'd won 6 of their last 8 games. They've won 4 of their last 5. And it's been because of the defense and the run game with Jonathan Taylor. Those two factors have been the difference. And if you exclude the only loss that they've suffered over the last 5 games against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in which they gave up a game-winning drive to Tom Brady, with the exception of that one game, their defense has held opponents to 12 points per game. So they're starting to round into form. And if you've been watching this show, if you've listened to me before, I'm going to rehash this one more time. I've said this about a gazillion times, that I'm extremely bullish about the Indianapolis Colts. Why? I don't know. I love Jonathan Taylor. He's a Wisconsin running back, and I'm always going to – Wisconsin guys are always going to curry a little bit more favor in my book, but I just truly love the complexion of this team. You look at this team and you say, the Indianapolis Colts are going to go however far Jonathan Taylor's legs can run them for. As long as Carson Wentz can be competent, doesn't have to be great. If he can be competent and make a couple key throws in every single game, the Indianapolis Colts can advance pretty far in the postseason. They're the 5th seed right now, the number 1 wild card. They have an outside shot of winning their own division, given the fact that the Titans have been slipping. Who wants to face the Indianapolis Colts in the postseason? There's not a single team who is salivating at the chance to face Frank Wright, Jonathan Taylor, and the Colts. No one's doing that. And you look at the rest of their schedule, and it's actually pretty favorable. They go to the Arizona Cardinals, who are inexplicably reeling right now. They just lost to the Detroit Lions, and it's not like they lost to the Detroit Lions off a game winner like the Vikings. They beat them soundly, like 30-12. It was embarrassing. And so they're reeling right now. DeAndre Hopkins is lost for the regular season and the majority of the postseason. If they were to make the NFC Championship game, that then maybe he'd be back. And as an aside, it just further highlights the fact that any team can be beaten in the NFL on any given Sunday. I mean, just look, Cardinals to the Lions, and they lose badly. That's the reality of the game. That's the reality of the sport. Anyone can be had on any given Sunday. And so they travel to Arizona, so they're probably catching the Cardinals at the most ideal time if they were to face them on the road. Then they return home against the Las Vegas Raiders, who are in shambles right now. We'll see how they fare against the Browns, but they're in shambles right now. And then they end the season on the road at Jacksonville, who's a dumpster fire. And they've got no incentive to continue to win, because right now they're in line to collect their 2nd straight number 1 overall pick if they continue to lose. So, yes, the players are going to be fighting for a victory, but at the end of the day, it doesn't behoove them to actually win. So right now the schedule is laying out kind of beautifully for the Indianapolis Colts to continue to rack up some wins. And again, just continue to get healthy, develop some momentum heading into the postseason. And I really like the way that team is trending. And I just think that they're a really well-coached group. And as I said, Jonathan Taylor is an absolute monster. And I do think that right now he's probably second in the MVP race behind Aaron Rodgers. I truly believe that. Do I think he will win it? No, especially if the Packers continue to win. But I think he should definitely be garnering that type of consideration if he hasn't already. I mean, it's just the AFC too. It's like the wild west. There's just so much cannibalism going on within that own conference that who knows how it's going to shake out. We really don't know. The AFC North is wild, so we'll see what the rest of this week with games today and Tuesday, how that all unfolds. But tremendous win for the Indianapolis Colts.